Day in and day out, Los Angeles pulses with people on its palm-fringed boulevards and around its famed landmarks. But behind the sparkle, there's a darker undercurrent. Stories of tragedy woven into its everyday spaces. From a furniture store on a busy boulevard to an iconic bridge in East LA, today we talk about 5 locations in Los Angeles where fates took devastating turns. Croft House Furniture is a luxury home furnishing retailer known for its reclaimed handmade pieces, such as beds, tables, and decor. Croft House is located here on the bustling street of La Brea Avenue in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Hancock Park, one of Los Angeles' most diverse and influential neighborhoods. On January 13, 2022, 24-year-old consultant Brianna Kumpfer was working the opening shift alone at Croft House. She wasn't supposed to be alone that day, but was covering a coworker's shift. At around 1:30 p.m., a man walked in, but something about him felt off. Brianna messaged her manager via the Slack messaging app. She texted, "There's someone in the store giving me weird vibes." She asked her manager to call her. The manager did call back a few minutes later, but Brianna never answered. About 20 minutes later, 2 customers entered the store and found Brianna's lifeless body on the floor, covered in blood. She had been stabbed 46 times, with wounds to her lungs, liver, and heart. Evidence at the scene showed that Brianna had tried to make a run out of the door, only to be blocked by the assailant. Investigators later discovered a voice recorder left at the scene. It belonged to the killer and had captured the final moments of Brianna's life, for which she desperately begged. The suspect, Sean Laval Smith, a 31-year-old homeless man with a long criminal history. Surveillance footage showed him leaving the store and then casually shopping at a nearby 7-Eleven. Police released the footage, and Smith was arrested days later in Pasadena. During the trial, prosecutors revealed Smith had been hunting for a victim that day. That morning, he entered several businesses along La Brea, always leaving when he saw more than one employee. Brianna, who was the first person he encountered working alone, became his target. The voice recording captured Smith pretending to shop, making unsettling conversation, and ultimately attacking Brianna after she told him she'd call the police. On October 2nd, 2024, after a harrowing trial and an insanity plea that was rejected, Smith was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Today, Croft House remains open, but the memory of Brianna, described by her family as a beautiful soul who wanted to make the world better, lives on. The 6th Street Bridge in Los Angeles is a striking architectural landmark that reopened in 2022 following a multi-million-dollar renovation. But since its unveiling, it has gained notoriety as a hotspot for risky behavior and viral stunts. In May 2023, that reputation took a tragic turn. 17-year-old Anthony Luna had planned a fun night out with friends on the popular overpass. In the early hours of the morning, he attempted to climb on one of the bridge's iconic arches, but lost his balance and fell. The fall from the bridge, which reaches over 100 feet at its highest point, was ultimately fatal. Initial reports from the LAPD suggested Anthony may have been attempting a social media stunt when he fell. However, his father, Paul Luna, publicly disputed that claim, stating that Anthony didn't even have his phone with him and wasn't seeking online attention. He described his son as a good kid who made a tragic mistake. Anthony's death reignited concerns about safety on the bridge, which has been plagued with issues since its reopening, including illegal street racing, graffiti, and dangerous climbs. As city officials consider new safety measures, the tragedy serves as a stark reminder that even celebrated public spaces can harbor real dangers, especially in an era when a moment of thrill can result in irreversible loss. Located in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, the Bunker Hill Towers are a luxury high-rise condominium complex built in 1968. Nestled beside the iconic Disney Concert Hall, the towers offer residents a wide array of upscale amenities and features. However, few people know that more than 4 decades ago, this seemingly serene residence was the site of a harrowing and long-forgotten tragedy. On the night of October 29, 1979, a devastating fire broke out in the 11th floor unit, believed to have been sparked by a cigarette smoldering in overstuffed furniture. As flames rapidly engulfed the apartment, a couple became trapped and found themselves clinging to life on a narrow ledge outside their unit. The couple was Thomas Maxwell, age 59, and his wife Joyce Maxwell, age 50. A witness whose apartment faced the same courtyard later recounted the horrific events in an article for the Los Angeles Times. According to the witness, the couple had climbed onto the ledge from their own unit, which faced the back of the building. Meanwhile, firefighters were focused on the front side of the tower, seemingly unaware of the couple's desperate situation. The witness described making frantic phone calls to the fire department, trying to direct them to the rear of the building where the Maxwells were trapped. For 20 agonizing minutes, they watched helplessly as no help arrived. Desperate, the witness threw on clothes and rushed downstairs, eventually flagging down a firefighter on the street. But even then, they claimed their pleas for help were met with indifference. When the witness returned to the courtyard, they were confronted with a horrifying sight. The couple had jumped. Their lifeless bodies, along with their beloved black poodle, were found in the patio area below. Other witnesses would later recount their final moments in chilling detail. Many reported hearing Mrs. Maxwell's anguished screams for help, so loud they woke up residents in neighboring buildings. Thomas Maxwell was the first to jump, holding the family dog in his arms. When neighbors rushed to his side, they found his robe partially burned, the fabric charred by the intense flames. Moments later, after witnessing the fate of her husband and dog, Mrs. Maxwell also jumped, right after reportedly crying out that the fire was coming up through the floor beneath her. In addition to the couple's tragic deaths, a third resident, 44-year-old Sidney Carton, also perished. After fleeing his apartment in search of safety, Carton attempted to reach an elevator, but found it inoperable. He was later found dead from smoke inhalation in a hallway on the same floor. The fire, while ultimately contained by firefighters, exposed major flaws in high-rise fire safety systems and emergency response. Officials noted that newly installed fire alarms malfunctioned during the incident, failing to alert many residents who were asleep at the time. While some panicked and fled, many survived by sheltering in place, unaware of the full scope of the danger. The tragedy of October 29, 1979 has widely faded from public memory. But for those who witnessed it, and for the families of Thomas and Joyce Maxwell, their dog, and Sidney Carton, it remains a chilling reminder of how quickly disaster can strike, and how critical swift and coordinated emergency response truly is. Vernon, California is a small industrial city just outside of downtown Los Angeles. Vernon is known for its concentration of factories, warehouses, and processing plants. But despite its major role in supplying food and goods, it has a long-standing reputation for poor labor conditions and lax regulatory oversight. The city has few residents but does host hundreds of businesses, many of which employ immigrant and low-wage workers in physically demanding and often dangerous roles. It was in this setting that 19-year-old Brian Naftali, a migrant from Guatemala, found work at Tina's Burritos, a frozen food manufacturing company based in Vernon. Brian had arrived in the U.S. only a few months earlier to support his family. However, on July 13, 2025, Brian was fatally injured while cleaning an industrial meat grinder at the Tina's Burritos facility. The machine suddenly activated, pulling him inside. Although co-workers heard his screams and called for help, emergency responders confirmed he had already died by the time they arrived. Brian's death, officially labeled an industrial accident, sparked grief and outrage, particularly among advocates for immigrant and worker rights. Many pointed to failures in basic safety procedures, specifically the lack of proper lockout protocols that should prevent machines from being activated during cleaning or maintenance. Brian's case highlights the vulnerability of immigrant laborers, who are often assigned the most hazardous tasks with little training and oversight. Brian is remembered by his family as a kind and hard-working young man who had traveled north in hopes of building a better future for his loved ones. Following his death, fundraising efforts have been organized to repatriate his body to Guatemala for burial. Interstate 405, better known as the 405, is a major Southern California freeway that begins in Irvine, runs through Orange County, skirts the west side of Los Angeles, and crosses the Sepulveda Pass into the San Fernando Valley. Since opening in the early 1960s, it's become one of the busiest highways in both Los Angeles and the United States, carrying hundreds of thousands of vehicles daily. Angelenos are familiar with the 405, not just for its traffic, but also for some infamous events. One of the most tragic occurred in the early morning hours of January 16, 1997. Ennis William Cosby, the son of Bill and Camille Cosby, was driving northbound when his Mercedes-Benz convertible got a flat tire near the Mulholland Drive exit in the Sepulveda Pass. Ennis pulled over near the Skirball Center Drive access road to change the tire, and then called his girlfriend Stephanie Crane and asked her to meet him, hoping her car's headlights could help him see better. When she arrived a few minutes later, she suggested calling a tow truck, but Ennis chose to fix the tire himself. Stephanie waited in her car nearby until a man suddenly appeared at her window and pointed a gun at her. Panicked, she drove off, leaving Ennis alone. When she circled back a few minutes later, she found Ennis had been shot and the suspect was fleeing on foot. The gunman was 18-year-old Mikhail Markasev, a Ukrainian immigrant who had been loitering with friends at this nearby park and ride lot. As Ennis exited the freeway to pull over, he drove past the park and ride lot, catching Mikhail's attention. Authorities believe the sight of Ennis's high-end Mercedes, worth about $130,000 at the time, prompted Mikhail to seize what he saw as an opportunity for a robbery. After Stephanie fled, Mikhail approached Ennis, who was now all alone by the roadside. He attempted to rob him, but when Ennis didn't produce money quickly enough, Mikhail shot him in the head, killing him instantly. The murder shocked the nation, not only because Ennis was the son of a celebrity, but because of how senseless the crime was. Ennis was a promising young man with a bright future, cut down in a random act of violence. Mikhail was later convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Although the murder happened just off of one of the busiest freeways in America, the spot itself, nestled in the residential hills of the Santa Monica Mountains, is relatively quiet at night. Ennis likely intended to be there only briefly, just long enough to fix a flat tire. But in a cruel twist of fate, he became the victim of a violent crime by being in the wrong place at the wrong time.